Hello everybody, once again, what is up? This is Alex back in for another comic book review, and I've kind of been putting this one off for a while now, but I really want to cover a bunch of different kinds of comics, and to do that I really have to touch base in the autobiographical region of comics. And there's a lot of really interesting ones out there, and one that I've wanted to talk about the most, for some reason, and I really don't know why, maybe we'll figure out in this video, is, come here, Fun Home by Alison Bechdel. And this is a really interesting one. Probably, you know, I think it really should be one of the first ones that you think of if you think of an autobiographical comic, aside from things like, maybe if you think of Mouse or things like that, but in terms of just purely talking about your own life and making it in comic form, which technically Mouse does some things that are different, but we can talk about Mouse later if we make a video on it, which more than likely will happen. But Fun Home is different, and in the terms of it is purely autobiographical. So, first thing that was like an immediate turnoff, I don't want to pay too much attention to this book for me, was the foil on the cover, and there is technically foil on the back cover. If you can see, that green is shiny and really hard to read the back. I just found that super irritating, and I just kept putting it back on the shelf because of that. I was like, I can't take this seriously. The cover design is like so crooked and poor, and I was like, oh, put it back. I don't want to pay too much attention. Then it's not like the figures on the front look too interesting for me to dive in and figure out more about them. People will argue, I'm sure, but whatever. This really had to be assigned to me in a class for me to go to read it. Mainly because I didn't think I cared too much about the autobiographical comic era, genre. There's some I've read that I've really enjoyed, and there's some that I didn't, which is good. It should be that way. I think so. If I enjoyed all of them, then I'd probably be making them, which I know eventually I feel like I want to make my own, but I've got more life to live to get to that point where I have more story. But anyway, this is not about me, this is about Bechdel's work here. So this is obviously a graphic novel. You can see it's kind of fat right there. It looks like a novel size. I'm trying to describe the size of the book if you haven't seen it already, so it's a pretty decent size. It is very long to get through because the pages are very text heavy, and aside from being just simply text heavy, they are, as you can kind of see a little bit of the art style in here, it has a very high reading level, and by that I mean like you might want a dictionary next to you when you try and read this. Unfortunately, I was kind of irritated. Yeah, I was really just kind of irritated, as if Bechdel was trying to sound like she was in like a whole other class of intelligence other than the poor lay people who are reading her book. But you know, that's just something I get from certain novels where people are just trying to forcefully insert huge words that could have very easily been replaced with smaller words that would have made much more sense immediately, and I would have understood what they were trying to say. I would rather someone just very clearly, you know, define what they were trying to say. But I think where I'm already going with this is the content of the story is really not too important in this. It is all in the delivery of the autobiographical comic. The story, very briefly, just to get it out of the way, it's basically Alison Bechdel talking about her life growing up in a funeral home where her family lived and worked, and it's mainly about her and her relationship to her dad. And her dad, this is not a spoiler, she says it multiple times early in the book, dies from suicide, maybe. They aren't quite sure, but basically it is a story about her and her relationship with her father, because they're both gay. Her father was keeping it in, not really expressing it, letting people know. He was more introverted, and it's more about how his life affected hers and how she figured out that she was gay as well. And that progresses, and I think one of the hard things in making a very successful autobio comic is you need to be able to find what's relevant at different points in your life and actually arrange them in a proper order to where we, the reader, are understanding things the way you did, but also in the same context of understanding things slightly out of order, because you really do tell some stories out of order like this. So she might visit the grave like in the middle of the book when, you know, the dad, we'll go right back to talking about the dad later. There's very smart reasons for why she was doing those things. I think it was told very well because of that. There's a lot of intertwining with her life story and figuring out why certain things happened to her, and she makes a lot of literary analogies, a lot of what is the word? I'm sure there's a word for it. I'm totally forgetting. I think it starts with an A. But anyway, she makes a lot of references to popular literature, or really hard to get into things that she's reading. I say hard to get into because things that require like a really high reading level, and once again, really high reading level, lots of very big words, things that are typically going to gloss over a lot of people. And the problem with that is if you do that too much, which she does it too much, she does it way too much, people who are not that invested in wanting to get the whole story out of this book won't, because it happens so frequently. It actually becomes like a requirement to have a dictionary with you to read through this book, and it takes very long to do so. I did it that way, and I really just wish she just wrote it in a way that everyone would understand it so that she can get her own story out there. It's almost more like she did that so that she would just look or appear to be making more intelligent decisions, or very thoughtful in what she was doing, which I'm not saying she wasn't in her actions in this book, but I'm saying that by choosing insanely huge words, you're really just limiting your audience significantly and how much people are really going to get out of your book, which, that's disappointing. I don't think you should do that. But anyway, the story does actually progress in here. I find it okay. It's really just okay. This gets so much recognition, it has so many awards. There's a ton, like the first, let me see, 3 pages of this? Yes, the first 3 pages of this are quotes from different either people or websites or magazines, and the first page is a list of its national bestseller lists of the newspapers it's been in. I'm assuming those are all newspapers. They appear to either online periodicals or whatever. Basically, you know right away, right, this is a big deal. And immediately when I finished it, I was just kind of like, oh, that's it? Like, as in, that's what you were leading up to this whole time? I was like, then what was the big grab, you know? It's okay. I think this gets a lot of popular recognition when I don't know if it really should be getting that much. There's a lot of really good, well, not really. There's not that many really great autobiographical comics out there. There's a couple I can think of, but there's a lot of them that have a lot of crucial issues in them, and I think it's just really hard to tell an autobiographical story because you need to have a story. It can't just be me talking about myself. In theory, anyone, you know, you talking about yourself, which is using first person. But anyway, art-wise, the art I actually think is very fitting to the story because it is very muted in color choice. I actually had a discussion with a group of people at one point determining whether this was a color or not, because it appears just to be gray tones washed over just ordinary inks, and there's, like I said, tons of text in here. the text appears to be hand done. If it is, that is awesome because it's done really well. That and there's a ton of text in here already, but it could very easily be a font, and I'm trying to tell if it's not. I just saw like 3 Gs, and they all looked different, so I would actually say it's hand-lettered, but I'm not quite sure. If it is, I mean, that's really crazy. I didn't notice that. That's a ton of extra effort to do that. I really don't want to get too much into the actual relationships between these people, because that's really the main drive behind reading this book, from what I gathered, because it's more understanding this family and sinking into their life than it is leading up to a climactic story of somebody's life. So instead of like trying to describe like some traumatizing event or something like that that happened to somebody, which I can actually name a couple autobiographical comics that will do that, this is more about understanding people, which is cool. You can do that. Yep. Obviously, it can do that because everyone loves this. I'm just trying to be dead honest with you guys when I make my videos, okay? Oh my gosh, that was a long cut. There was something wrong with my mom's computer, and I spent like an hour or so just trying to get the virus off of it, which I did! Yes! Anyway, I basically just am trying to say I have absolutely no idea where I was talking about this, but I'm pretty sure we've kind of covered pretty much all of it that I really wanted to cover. It's really interesting in the fact that it is done in this fashion. I think if I was going to make a autobiographical comic, I would do it similarly to the way that this one is handled, to where the narration is being dispersed basically as one long story that someone is telling you through text, and the visual aid through the comic examples of, alright, say if I'm talking about a specific time in my life, or you know, whoever's life, in this case Bechtel, she'll talk about, say, being with her dad at this point, and as she's talking above, which my complaints, I spent too much time complaining about her huge words, but it will become irritating, I think, as you read through it, but not that big of a deal. But anyway, the way that the text is integrating with the imagery and the comic portions of the imagery, which, you know, the people inside of the panels in the actual art are replicating the actual events of their life, and the text is referring to it, telling its own story, as they're both going on kind of doing their own thing. And the comic portion can jump around to whatever is relevant to that main talking text, which I think that's a pretty cool way to tell the story. Honestly, the whole thing, I mean, the comic as a whole, story-wise, it's really just okay, kind of hard to grasp, but it's not bad, okay? I do have a weird feeling about this comic. Like I said, there's a bunch of things that just kind of make it awkward for me, but I'm not getting rid of it. I enjoy it. I like that I can compare this to other things, and that it is a very good resource for what I might do for my own comic work in the future. So, let me know what you guys think in the comments below, what you think about Funhem, if any of you have read it, or absolutely hate my opinion, think I'm being too negative about it, which, sorry, I try to be brutally honest with everything I've read, and I feel like I've been definitely through that with this comic here. It is one of the, if not first, autobiographical comics I've read, though I did kind of just reskim the entire thing again before this review, so it's not like I'm being biased by that, but I have read a whole lot since then, so it's better than a lot I've read. So if you want to get into autobiographical comics, or just want to try new comics in different genres, I was going to say realms again, then Funhem is... it's okay. It's okay. I'm probably going to review some others at one point. I mentioned Mouse, which is kind of autobiographical. Like, I mean, it is at heart. Just like Blankets, which is probably going to come soon, is autobiographical at heart. There's like stuff like Stitches, autobiographical at heart. So we're going to get to more. We'll definitely talk about those when they come up. So let me know about Fun Home. Let me know what you think about autobiographical comics in general, and I will see you guys in the next comic book review.